Hello everyone. If you are following along with us in McGraw-Hill, we are in chapter 6. We are just on lesson 5 and now we're going to begin to multiply a decimal times another decimal. So if you haven't yet, please check out the other decimal videos where it explains how to multiply a decimal times a whole number. This is going to be very similar, except we do something a little bit differently when we get to our answer and where to place the decimal. So here we go. So our problem is going to be 75 hundredths times 2 1/10. But before I get to that, I want to go over what we're doing when we multiply decimals. So let's go back, and if we had a decimal times a whole number, let's say it was 2 1/10 times 2, how did we set it up? Always put the bigger number on top. Okay, just like you would if you were multiplying whole numbers, right? If we were doing 25 times 2, you would stack it like that. It's the same thing if we had a decimal number. So if it helps you, just kind of cover up that decimal, but you can't get rid of any of the digits. Keep them there, and always put the bigger digit on top, okay? So as far as stacking it, this number, even though it's a 0.75, the 0 is included. I want that to stay there. Don't get rid of it. And we're going to put this one on top because it does have 3 digits and this one just has 2. So we're going to do 0 and 75 hundredths on top. And then remember when we added and subtracted decimals, we line them up? We don't do that when we multiply. Okay? So I want you to look at how that's set up. I did not line up the decimal. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to multiply properly. So if it helps you, what I love to do is to get rid of the decimals and just stack it like this. I know that looks really funny. It's 0.75 times 21, but it's essentially helping you to stack it properly, and that's just the very first step, okay? So once you've stacked it properly, now we're going to go ahead and multiply. We multiply just like we would when we multiply whole numbers, going through each of the steps, putting in placeholders. So here we go. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 7 is 7. 1 times 0 is 0. Okay, I multiplied out the 1. Now I'm going to use that 2, and I need to put a placeholder here. And now I'm going to multiply the 2. Make sure the 2 gets multiplied to every number on top, starting with this number over here, which is a 5. 2 times 5 is 10, so carry the 1 and place your 0. 2 times 7 is 14, plus 1 is 15, so carry the 1 and place your 5. 2 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. And then we add. We have a 5, a 7, a 5, and a 1. Now, our answer is not 1,575 because remember, we need to figure out where the decimal goes. So when we added and subtracted, we just brought the decimal down. But when we multiply a decimal by anything, a whole number or another decimal, which in this case we have 2 decimals, you need to count the spaces towards the decimal. So starting up here, I have 1, 2 spaces. And this one has a decimal. This one is over 1 space. So add that together, and that means the decimal needs to be 3 spaces over from the right. So starting here, 1, 2, 3. This is the right answer, 1 and 575 thousandths. All right, let's go ahead and see another example. Let's go ahead and we're going to do 0.50 times 0.06. I'm including zeros in these examples because sometimes when we see zeros there, we get a little bit confused. But don't let that confuse you. It's still the same idea. You want to figure out how to stack it and then just multiply, okay? The decimals, we don't have to worry about them till the end. So if it helps you, get rid of the decimal and just write it like this. Don't leave out any of the digits, and then just stack it on top of each other like this, okay? And then put the decimals where they belonged. In this one, the decimal was right here, and in this one, the decimal was right here. They happen to be looking like they're lined up, but remember, that's not the goal. You don't line up the decimal, you put them where they're at, and all the numbers should be lined up right here on the edge, okay, to the right. And now we're going to multiply. 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 5 is 30, carry the 3. 6 times 0 is 0 plus 3 is 3. Now I put my placeholder here because I'm done with the 6. And even though these are zeros, I want you to multiply them out. 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 5 is 0. 0 times 0 is 0. Now I have to put 2 placeholders because now I'm saying I've multiplied out both of those numbers, and now I'm going to be here for the third number over, okay? Even though it's a 0, you're still going to multiply it out. 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 5 is 0. And 0 times 0 is 0. Okay, now we add. Make sure everything's nice and lined up. Now look at this answer. It looks kind of funny. We have 2 zeros and a 3 and then 2 zeros. So you might say, oh, the answer's 300. But we have to put the decimal where it belongs. So count the spaces over starting on the right side of the number. Count how many spaces over the decimal is placed. This is placed 2 times over, and this is also 2 times over. So the total amount is 4. So starting in my answer, I go 1, 2, 3, 4. So let me write it up here. So our answer comes out to 0.0300. Okay, so I think the most important thing is to understand how to stack it. Okay, if I had 6 1/10 times 5/10, I'd stack it like that. If I had 7 575 thousandths times a 1.7, I'd stack it like that. Just make sure everything, the digits on the right, they all need to be lined up here, okay? The only time we line up the decimal is when we add or subtract, all right? And then in the end, don't forget to count over your decimal spaces, add those together, and that's where your decimal will be placed in your answer. I'm going to do one more, and then that should be good for you guys to get going on whatever it is you're working on. Let's go ahead and do 1.7. Okay, we're going to do 1 7200ths times 0. Actually, I'm going to do it like this. Sorry, I want to see a different example. Okay, so this one has 3 digits. This one only has 2. So put the bigger one on top. Don't line up the decimal. I want the numbers lined up on the right. So the 1 needs to go here and the 3 goes here, which means the decimal is sitting right in between there. Okay? And then you multiply out. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 7 is 7. 1 times 1 is 1. Put your placeholder. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 7 is 21. 3 times 1 is 3. Plus 2 is 5. Then we add. So we have 5,332. It's not our answer. We need to count the decimal spaces. This one on top had 2 spaces. This one had 1. So together that makes 3. So I go to my answer and I count 1, 2, 3. And let me write up there here. So 5 332 thousandths is our answer. All right, you guys, I hope that helps you. Be sure to check out the other videos for this chapter on how to work and multiply decimals.